I'd actually like to start with a discussion about the FISA application and FISA warrants that we got the Department of Justice to release. As our viewers can see, it's hundreds of pages of pretty heavily redacted documents. But there is some information in there that was important. It's still a big deal. So if you could walk our viewers through kind of why we were so concerned about the FISA issue and why getting these documents released matters so much.
Well, we began asking for them a year ago, and we had to sue for them. And Devin Nunes, who's head of the Intelligence Committee, who looked at them because he's head of the Intelligence Committee, he could look at them because typically they're classified in secret, said that the Clinton DNC dossier was the center of these FISA warrants. So you had this campaign-funded anti-Trump dossier being used to justify secret spying on the Trump team. And Nunes alleged that the courts weren't told about this. And there were other material omissions that the courts may have wanted to consider, of facts that the courts may have wanted to consider, but they weren't told about it. So you're looking through these applications, and this is the first time applications, FISA secret applications, have been released to the public. And parts of them are declassified. And the only reason they're declassified and have been released because President Trump made the decision earlier this year to declassify information about the use of the Clinton DNC dossier to target the Trump team. And so the documents are really outrageous because they show that the Clinton DNC dossier, well, the Nunes memo was correct, but they confirmed the Clinton DNC dossier was used in a central focus of the warrant. As Andrew McCabe testified, I think, to Congress, he said no dossier, no warrants. And indeed, these documents confirm that. And then the document references the dossier 3 or 4 times in disguised ways. And they tell the court or pretend to the court that it's different information. So they reference the Clinton DNC dossier, the author, Christopher Steele, who was an agent of Fusion GPS, who was an agent of the Clinton DNC arm. But then they reference news articles based on leaks of the Steele dossier. Then they reference congressional concerns based on leaks of the Steele dossier. And then they reference State Department information about Carter Page, who was the target of this warrantless, this secret spying, I should say. It's not warrantless. And they don't mention that was tied to the Steele dossier or elements of it. So you have the warrant reference one piece of information 3 or 4 times as separate pieces of information. I mean, that's fundamentally dishonest. It's like if I tell you I've heard something, and you say, oh yeah, who from who? And I say, well, from me, myself, and I, 3 people. And another way of thinking about it is the self-licking ice cream cone. It's this circular feedback loop that was disguised in seeking the awful power to spy on American citizens based on the allegation that they were foreign agents. And they didn't have anything really to point to other than this dossier. And they pretended to the court otherwise. And who's responsible for this? We have the people who signed it are in the warrants. James Comey, Sally Yates, the Obama holdover, Andrew McCabe, Dana Puente, who is a Obama holdover now, the general counsel of the FBI, and Rod Rosenstein. And Rosenstein signed off on one of these warrants in June of last year during the Mueller operation. So Mr. Mueller has to answer for these abusive warrants as well. And the president's taken notice of this. He highlighted these records were uncovered to Judicial Watch. And now it's up to him to declassify the rest of it, because what members of Congress like Nunes have said, who have seen this, they said, well, if you think the DNC dossier was bad, the Clinton DNC dossier was bad, there's even worse stuff in this material that hasn't been released yet. So the president needs to intervene and release this information.
And because you referenced that the Nunes memo being released helped with allowing this information to be released, and now that this information is
right.
out,
The president declassified the Nunes memo that referenced this, so they really couldn't withhold all of this from us anymore. So eventually, as a result of our lawsuit, we were able to get these FISA warrant applications, and an incredible accomplishment.
And it's your hope now that the president goes ahead and releases more.
Yes, and there's not only here, but there's all sorts of other things that could be declassifying too. But this is a good example of why the president needs to intervene, because Rod Rosenstein doesn't want to look bad. He's not going to authorize the declassification if he can help it. The general counsel of the FBI, who also signed off on this, he's conflicted out. The president's the only one who can really do it, in my view, or ought to be able to do it, because I don't really trust the FBI and the DOJ to expose their own corruption.